Hello and welcome to Communication Connection. I'm Terry Likes. Thank you so much for joining us. Communication Connection is a program that often focuses on student achievement, faculty accomplishments, or alumni involved with the program. And our guest in this episode is Marcus Hunter. Thank you so much for joining us. Marcus, you happen to fit several of those categories. You were once a student here, now a proud member of the alumni organization.
Yes.
And you are now teaching here at the university after a long career of working in television. So we'd like to talk about some of those things, your illustrious career and what brought you back to your alma mater. Sometimes life has a way of going full circle.
It does.
As noted, you've worked in television for a long time. What's it like to be back now and teaching in your first semester at your alma mater?
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. And one of the things about being back here at Mississippi State, teaching at my alma mater, is the sense of family and camaraderie and being back home. I'm from Columbus, Mississippi, which is just down the road, about 25 minutes drive, and being able to be back here, hear the cowbells every Saturday on the football Saturday, and see the students, and being back near the dorm where I once stayed in and walking the halls of McComas and teaching classes there is so much nostalgia. And I'm just glad to be back and being a part of the Mississippi State University faculty side of things now, so I can lend some of the things that I've learned throughout my career to the students here so that we can have Mississippi State alumni all over the country broadcasting and being a part of the media network that we have in the country.
Well, we are certainly glad to have you here. You mentioned family. It's something that President Keenum often talks about. And
absolutely.
Let's go back to your college days then. You mentioned football season, and as we record this episode, we're in the heart of the football season. And during your college days, you were on the team at the time. Tell us about that experience.
I was on the team, and that experience was extremely fun for me in so many different ways, not only being a part of the football team, but also being a part of the media as well, because I was working for a local television station at around that same time. So I had that interesting perspective of being on the football side, going to practice and seeing the media coming to practice and interviewing the players, and then also being on the media side and at one point interviewing my own head coach, Jackie Sherrill, and talking to him about the game plan and hearing him give answers to the media, but knowing what the game plan was from behind the scenes and seeing the differences of how the coaches spoke to the media and how they spoke to the team. Those things really stuck out, and they really helped me throughout my career.
So you mentioned, you really took initiative while you were in school. You mentioned working at WCBI, the local CBS affiliate,
Yes.
while you were in school. A lot of students interned. You were working there. Tell us about what it was like to work while you were in college and juggle football, academics, and working.
It was a very interesting experience because I was able to mix the knowledge that I was learning from working at a television station with the instruction that I was getting on the classroom side of things. And I really think that helped me propel my career to the point where shortly after graduating, I was able to get a job in a larger market. And, just having that experience is one that I'm trying to bring to the students here at Mississippi State, because I know how invaluable that was for me to have that hands-on experience and getting that classroom experience at the same time. So I want the students here to get that same kind of experience so that they can, have successful careers also.
So you mentioned right upon graduation, you were able to move on. You worked briefly at WCBI, is that correct? And
yes.
Working primarily in the area of sports journalism, is that right?
Yeah, so I worked at WCBI for about 3-4 years on air. I worked there behind the scenes before that, but I got my opportunity to do some on-air work at WCBI when I was a sophomore at Mississippi State. By the time I graduated, I was the weekend sports anchor, and having that much experience and having a good resume tape that I could put together and that allowed me to get that job in Memphis shortly after I graduated at a time where it was not usual for a college graduate to go to a market the size of Memphis. That's changed a little bit now, but that experience I was able to get here really opened that door up for me. And I've seen so many of our students who are having those same opportunities because, like you were saying, students are interning, and there are some students here who are also working at some local stations.
And like many industries, part of climbing that career ladder, if you will, and the media is no different than that. So working at WCBI and then a jump to Memphis is a pretty big jump in those circles.
It really is, and that's why I talk so much about that experience and why that is so valuable for the students to be able to get. And having the experience of working at that television station in Columbus for 4 years and then being able to move to Memphis. I didn't go to Memphis not knowing anything. Having the opportunity to cover SEC sports, Mississippi State football, basketball, Alabama football, basketball, because WCBI, we cover not just Mississippi sports, we cover the region. So having those opportunities, then going to Memphis where I was working and covering the Memphis Grizzlies, it wasn't so much a culture shock for me because I had all those other opportunities. And that's what I'm seeing now with so many state students with the SEC network, with Hell State Plus, having those opportunities to do so many things behind the scenes, the MSU television station, just having those opportunities. I'm really seeing that helping our students now, and that helped me then. And so I'm really happy about all of those things that are coming together.
So working in sports television, having a background in sports, you eventually were lured away across the anchor desk to the news side of things. What brought that about?
Well, a former Mississippi State alum, Ben Hart, he was the news director at a television station in Jackson, Mississippi. And I knew Ben from my time at WCBI. And Ben and I had always talked about making sure that I was well versed, not just in sports, but also in news as well, because news is always happening. And when I was in Memphis, I took several opportunities to do news stories. And so when an opportunity opened itself up in Jackson, I had enough of a news background and I had done enough in news that I was able to put together a reel, put together a good resume, got an interview, went down, auditioned for the job, and thankfully I was able to get it. And one of the reasons I wanted to do that was because being a news anchor, you have so many more opportunities to connect with the viewer. And that is really important to me, not just to connect with the viewer and tell them the stories or just being on TV. I want to connect with the viewer in a way that makes the story more interesting, that makes the viewer want to watch the news, because what we're seeing so much is a lot of people are turning away from the news, and you have to have the type of people on air that are engaging as well. And I wanted to take what I knew from a sports side of things and being engaging and bring that to the news side. And that was a part of it. I wanted to make myself really well-rounded as a media personality, and doing sports and doing news was another way to do that.
Well, it's all about compelling storytelling. We'll often have students approach us and say, well, I don't want to do news, I want to do entertainment, or I want to do sports. I'm like, but that's all journalism.
Exactly.
When something happens that is more serious in the entertainment world, it's going to lead a newscast, for example, and so forth. So working in Jackson television, Marcus Hunter, a professional television personality and journalist, and now joining the faculty here at Mississippi State, is our guest. And so Jackson, and then working in news, and now moving back to Memphis, but this time a different TV station. So people in the media, it's fairly common knowledge, they tend to move around a lot, and you're certainly no exception to that.
No exception at all. And, going back to Memphis is not something that was necessarily in the plan or in the cards, but that opportunity presented itself thanks to the work that I was able to do in Jackson, Mississippi. And when you have an opportunity to go back to a city that you loved, because I love Memphis, it was I say Memphis is my second home, because after graduation, I went there. So it's really where I grew up, especially in this business. So having the opportunity to go back to that city and work for the #1 station in the market, to work for and with some of the best journalists that I've had the opportunity to work for, was invaluable for my career. I look at my time in Memphis, even though my second time around was so short-lived, I look at that time as one of the best opportunities for me, because it allowed me to take all the skills I had learned as a sports anchor for those years, as a news anchor for those years, and like you said, combine all of those to be a much more compelling storyteller. And I also learned so much from the seasoned journalists that work in Memphis. And just to get that extra wealth of knowledge has really, in my opinion, helped me grow full circle. And had it not been for the time that I had in Memphis, I don't think that I would be as good of an instructor as I am now, because I learned so much during that time that I'm able to add to the classroom that I think can really help our students get to the next level.
So you mentioned the classroom. What's it been like to make that transition from newsroom to the classroom?
You know, it's different because on the news, I was joking with my students about this last week, as a matter of fact. On the news, you're talking to a camera. You're not in a room full of people looking right back at you. So in the classroom, you're in a room full of people looking right back at you. But what I've learned is I've always been a person that's enjoyed teaching. I've always, when I've worked with someone who's come in the business who was new, didn't know as much as I did, I was always wanting to and willing to help them. And I've actually learned that the instruction part in the classroom isn't that difficult, because what I'm doing is taking what I know and taking the classroom aspect and what I know from the newsroom aspect and giving it to the students. And I believe in doing so, it helps me with the education process, because I am giving my knowledge to them. And so I really just think that overall, it really just combines to just work out perfectly for me.
Well, the university has created some new titles, and it gives more flexibility for as to how we hire. And in this case, you were hired as an associate professor of practice, which really means we can bring someone in with significant industry experience and bring, as you've alluded to, that experience for our students. So tell us about your teaching multimedia journalism, TV production, sports announcing, classes of that sort. What type of advice do you like to share with the students?
Every opportunity I have to share some advice with the students, I will, whether I am talking or teaching them about writing a VO and explaining to them why when you write the script, you capitalize everything and making sure they understand from an anchor's perspective when you're looking at that teleprompter why it is important that you write scripts the way that they're written, and that you write different words and acronyms and things like that the way that we do, because it's not just for the reading purposes of the producers. You have to look into a teleprompter. So I just continue to, anytime there is something that I can relate to from a real world experience from being in the business, I present that to my students. Or if it's something that I've learned from someone else in the business from my time working in the business, well, this particular person says this, and this is some good advice, so you might want to take this advice. And so I continue to try to take what I've learned, and I'm still working in the industry as well. I haven't completely gotten out of the business, so I continue to dabble in it so I can continue to learn more and continue to engage with my students and teach them more as I continue to learn more as well.
Marcus Hunter has been our guest. Thank you so much for joining us here on Communication Connection, and we thank you for watching. I'm Terry Likes. We'll see you next time.